Ladies and gentlemen, Jay Haft here. Another episode in my series, Corruption, Wisconsin. This episode's called The Rat Fink Emerges. Okay. So I want to go down here, and it says on here, this is a press release when they first started threatening us on the radio and the paper and that. It says, it's pretty much take 65% or we'll go through condemnation in your building will not be able to be occupied and it will be worth zero, business owner Michael Furchill said. So I'm just going to take a couple minutes and explain this. Condemnation and condemn are two different words. Okay, eminent domain is a process that the cities have to go through. There's a legal process to take someone's property for like for a highway or for a sports center for a good reason, okay? So they came out and threatened us. And what's interesting about this is Furchill was a realtor, okay? And, you know, he was kind of a sharp guy. I can't believe that he didn't know what the meaning of condemnation was and what time that he actually started working for the city. Because I talked to one of his workers and he said, yeah, he's working with the city. One of the guys that was worked for the city was actually he worked for the public works, but he got smart. He said, I'm leaving town. And he did that. Okay, so the thing is, eminent domain is the legal process to take the building. The process they have to use is called condemnation, okay? So that's when the owner of property gets an appraisal, the condemner is like the city, whatever. And if you have eminent domain powers, you're considered what they consider a federal agency, okay? So they each get appraisals, then they have a comparable one, and then they go to court and they define just compensation. But before that, they have to do a relocation plan. But cities don't like to do it. They don't like to follow the law, period. You know, they'd rather operate like criminals. So the word condemn is different than condemnation. That's why a lot of people think condemnation, it's actually a good thing. The condemning would be like if your building was ready to fall in the river and there was no occupancy and stuff, they could condemn your building because it's a public safety issue, which they don't seem to care about much other than that. And this is kind of like, I'm going to just go through a couple here, and then I'm going to go through Mr. Furchill. These are my opinions, okay? Because he already threatened to sue me. This is a while back. Okay, this is from some of the DNR people involved here, Beaver Dam Downtown Project. And it says, good to hear. This project continues to move forward. Thanks, Lloyd. It says, Chapter 30, permit aside. Thanks for all your fine work on this project. So what they did was, I'm not sure if this was for the flood wall or for the lead paint, contaminated fill, or whatever. And it says on the bottom, it says, I still have to issue a Chapter 30 permit after the public notice. Normally, you want to get the permit before you start the work. Okay, this is the city of Beaver Dam, and they sent me a letter that they wanted me to have inspect my building here, the pier columns. This was the second time I did it for the first time for Furchill. And then I should have had this in the last one, but, there's 500 some, every time I go through, I find something, because it's been such a myriad time. It said, Warden Heather Gotchick, along with Tom Stebbins, assistant dam operator in Beaver Dam, called Susan Joseph and myself at 14:30. They feel that the Furchill building, the first building over the river of the dam, has shifted, and it's only a matter of time before a portion of the building falls into the river, creating a 40% blockage of the river. The freeboard has gone from 12 to 15 in the last 24 hours. The flow shown on the gauge has dropped from 19 to 1,500 cubic feet per second. Although this flow is questioned because the gauge is submerged. I also visit Fox Lake at 1,100 hours, and the level has dropped about 1.5 to 2 feet in 6 days. So they dumped 2 feet of Fox Lake into Beaver Dam when you got a dam, a building that's ready to collapse and a dam that's extremely stressed. It just blows my mind. And then it says the city would like to put boards back in, but they're also with the potential of rain, the history of being unable to remove the boards. I said that, and I said it's on there. And then this is kind of interesting. It's the city, the DNR tried to help them, because, they're too, they'd rather threaten and ruin the people in their community. It says right here, and it's from Susan Joseph, the dam lady, subject Beaver Dam funding. And it says, this is the most important part. I already gave them over 10 funding sources, but they missed the deadline for many. And now I'm being asked to figure out what is left and they can apply for. We have a few grants that might work. So if you're the mayor or like John Summers, the city administrator, and they give you 10 sources of grants and you don't finish the paperwork on any of them, you don't deserve to be in office. I mean, but you'd rather threaten and blackmail and ruin the citizens of your community when the money was available for the grants. Yeah, it's a circus, man. It's like a cesspool. Okay, saving building is best for downtown. This is something I wrote because the DNR came out and they said they wanted to remove these buildings. And what they did is they rendered their buildings economically useless because you couldn't sell them after this. Okay, so saving buildings is best for downtown. Jay Hafe, the owner of Emotional Rescue at the time, reference to the Celestial Sense building downtown. There was no blinding because Furchill came out and said that he was blinded. Over 2.5 years ago, I noticed it. The Celestial building, Furchill's, was beginning to pull away from mines. So I took him personally and showed him. For a person who's so committed to downtown Beaver, how could he ignore the problem? Then a year later, I went over and told him again about this. He explained that if it gets worse, it's not addressed, his building could be condemned, which I kind of explained earlier. Then he made some repairs to patch the concrete work on it. Then the fire inspector found the problem, which is hard to see without the proper angle because of the river net. And inspector told me failure was imminent, so I worked to seal my basement. He wanted me to take everything out and encouraged me to close. So I closed for 3 days and was uncertain in the future of my business. Furchill came over and said he was going to take me to court because my building was causing his problem. I explained to him and he was wrong. Meanwhile, the fire department showed professionalism working with me. The next day, I hired Kunkel Engineering to do a study on my building. I went out to try and help Furchill. He told me that I had 1 minute because we had, he used to come to the bar once in a while, and I felt he was hitting on me. And I told him, I said, no, I'm not gay. And so he never came back, and I wasn't real depressed. I explained to him the two were built together, same construction, 1911. To separate from this, the original thought was the city was the whole section. Furchill's building would collapse and dam the river. And then I talked to Blaine, an old friend, Beaver Wrecking. He said that the steel beam constructed second floor joists run in opposite directions. This would help stop the fear of the collapse. I explained to Furchill that his main goal was to stabilize the situation. I told him to attempt to get floor jacks and planks, just stabilize the building. The problem for work in the back was almost impossible because of the lack of cooperation with Alliant Energy and all the power lines are close to the section. I feel if the bricks would fall, they could take out the power lines and may cause a fire or business interruption. These lines need to be addressed, especially because of high water and spring and possible collapse. Then comes the DNR, a high horse. The DNR did a flood study and determined that 6 of the 7 buildings are in question. I think that they put the cost and results to the public. I heard stories of as many as 11 buildings are questionable. By saying this publicly, these taxpayers and employers have no uncertainty for 10 years. They have no idea on the timetable. They should improve their business or not. Can they try and sell their business when they eventually be torn down? Who will pay for the demolition, relocating? Demolition costs to destroy these buildings will be high because of the asbestos and the downtown river location. The DNR said they don't want 1 brick. The DNR sometimes doesn't realize that they work for the customers, and we found out a lot more. And I would like the DNR to understand the consequences of the business owners. Their lives and their families. They should come and let the owners of the affected buildings know what's going on and give them a timetable. These 2 buildings, I believe, have historical significance and should be saved for the next generation to enjoy. I want to try to mobilize the public to preserve their historical properties. This city, like many others, faces serious issues. We need strong leadership about the proposed downtown park and Riverwalk. It's nice that they have better plans for the property owners' land than they already own. This is arrogance. I want to thank all my customers' business for support. I'm asking you, the taxpayer, to tell the mayor and the DNR what's going on. Okay, so what Furchill did was he called a meeting, and I was reluctant to go because, I felt his main claim to fame was selling these no money down mortgages, and a lot of people had problems with those, and then with the no money down stuff. And then he would always ask for like $200 or $300 after the sale. If he did that to you, go ahead and comment on here. But he would ask for extra money after he already made his commission. Okay, this is the addendum. I kind of showed you this earlier. It says Absolute Home. That was the name of his business. And it says shall or shall hold the city harmless for their elected officials, their legal counsel, employees, any liability or losses sustained from the flooding. That's interesting. Why would they want the liability for that? Sellers initiating this offer to sell at will, even though they were under duress. They just wanted to get it over. They dragged this out forever, and they received multiple funding for their property. Properties currently located, sellers shall be responsible for terminating any leases. And then it says on here, it says, failure of any of these properties to successfully close will remain a termination of this contract. And that's how they put the squeeze on me, because they had the other property owners, that really wanted to get out of there because they've had enough with the city. Yeah. And then offers continue upon the buyer receiving written environmental indemnity from the state of Wisconsin DNR. The DNR did give them that, but they can't give it to you. It all depends upon the way they negotiated. So that, I believe, was a fraudulent document. Its offers continued upon all approvals necessary for the creation of the TIF, where that city received the money, and then they had to waive their relocation, which they're supposed to get it in ready. But okay, these are some emails from the DNR. It says, and it's from Rob Davis and Furchall. They got to be real good friends. They were working together and stuff because Michael knew that shoe factory couldn't be developed, and I give him credit for a few things that he's not dumb. He's sharp. So I don't know if the city of Beaver have any ordinance requiring them to protect the lives of the property owners or the people. I guess they do, but again, of any uncertain. And then it says, let's see, emotional rescue contact me. It says, any new action yet by the city relative to the culverts of the floodway properties. See, what he did was the culverts did restrict the flow of the water when they went underneath there, and they said they didn't get a permit. But that's, and it says here, thank you, Tom, for making arrangements, informational meeting about the flood fringe properties. And then it says, there are numerous documents that are contrary to such a claim from sources such as the Army Corps of Engineers and FEMA. And then it says, down here, it says, and this is the most important part here. See, he knew that building couldn't legally be developed. And, I'm not saying he blackmailed them, but he put a squeeze on them. Let's put it that way. An additional concern of the flood fringe properties is unilateral or ununilateral designated flood fringe properties. It's supposed to be fair and equal treatment. Other notable properties that have been included in the fringe on either the flood map or the preliminary map are the Craft, Wisconsin Redevelopment's project, the Wyco building, and based on elevations on a preliminary floodplain map provided by FEDA. Building elevations of certain elevations like Craft, Wyco, Design Plus, Chili John's, believe that property must be 2 feet over the map benchmark high water to be not in a floodplain. We would expect that the removal of celestial buildings would, the Wyco will likely see limited benefit from the removal because the culverts were after all these buildings downtown. We will perform and pay for a LOMA when it can be performed. On a different note, the city has yet submitted the floodplain letter to Wyco assuring them that the Wyco property is not in the 100-year floodplain. We believe this is required relative to WIDA grant application approval tax credit funding for all this, free money. This what called it environmental they have to do for this project, and that's part of is the floodplain. Per David WIDA will not get that said letter, so. And then he kind of kisses up to the city. Oh, this and that. And, it's a great project. It's not. It's illegal. The city stressed that DNR is not pressing all floodway owners to be removed from the river. So then they want assurance that it's not the big bad DNR pushing the issue. Yet it is a law that there is no time limit, although the city has maintained that the culvert had no effect on the flooding and they all have restricted the flow. And it's like, okay. And then it says, this is, Michael Furchall and Rob Davis. Yes, 4 p.m. should be fine. I'll take the call at my desk so you can call me. I don't mean understand it. And but I have to be home with my sons at 5. So he's, spent time with his sons, but who cares about the families in town? Their families mean nothing to these criminals. Okay. This is Michael Furchall, Rob Davis. My confusion, he talks about the funding with that. And it says, the equalized, because that's just basically to show how you could zoom it in if you want, how they were working together. And this is an interesting one. Mayor Kennedy's response to Michael's email. An informal meeting with inspection service will remain scheduled for May 18th. A press release on the meeting has been arranged, although they have on there the meeting of a half hour is not meant to be a public hearing. Yeah, it's because they're required to have public hearings before they get permits and stuff and all. But this is real interesting, this email. It says, this is in September. It says, knowing how thorough Michael is, I tend to believe he is on his own consultant and developed a relationship with the DNR relative to his private matters. Absolutely. Probably more so than any of us realize. So I feel the meeting with the DNR on the 6th may not be that much new information relative to this building. I believe it's up to others to weigh in on thoughts. I have no problem with him being asked to come to the meeting because he's working with them, okay? I want to ask you guys, so would this qualify as conspiring with the DNR in the city? Okay. And then this is interesting. This is from Richard Zeman, okay, one of the prominent people in town. His wife had that Nancy's Notions, and she did really well. I'm not quite sure how good he did, but she did very well. And it says Richard Zeman, and then it's Trent Campbell, of course, one of the key conspirators, Bill Schwartz, Philip Ritchie, Tom Kennedy. And this is what Richard said. I think that we should also invite Michael to the meeting on the 6th. I know he has his own agenda. So what's interesting about this is to have what they call the CDC, which I guess has been dumped out. But, is this part of the broader conspiracy? Rich Zeman and Scott Eberly came into my bar one day, and he comes up and he looked around and this and that. I'm Richard Zeman, and, acting like he's the king of Beaver Dam. I didn't know Beaver Dam had a king, but he come in and he said, if you were to build a beer garden over on the side here, you could stay. And I said, Rich, I no longer want to do business in this town. I don't recommend it to anybody because it's such the criminals and what they've done. That I'm supposed to buy the land next door to me and build a beer garden, and I'm still under threat to have my building removed. So he's basically telling me, he knew that my building was, on the chopping block and, under threat from the DNR and the city with their conspiracy and their inextricably linked. So, did he try to blackmail me? Because I had to buy the land, build a beer garden, and I could stay. But if I didn't, then I wouldn't stay. So you tell me, is he conspiring to commit blackmail at the time? Yeah. So this is another one here. It says, it's from Furchaw again to Rob Davis, and it says, it's kind of some of the same information. They talk on it, and it says, it's a shame. I understand the law. I'm comfortable with removing my building, but I refuse to be lied to by the city and sell at less than my market value. I somewhat feel bad for the DNR as the city wrongly making melts. He's sucking up to him. Okay. And then this is another one here. It says, additional concern is the unilateral. I kind of went through this before, and it talks about it. On a different note, has the city yet submitted the floodplain letter to WIDA, assuming that the Wyco building is not in the floodplain? But he basically showed it there with the elevations. Do not delay and jeopardize the WIDA tax credit funding source. Yeah, there's real concern about it. So this is from Michael, since this letter is being sent, always contact me's cell phone and responds to email data, understands, empathizes with you. And then it says on here, I showed you where they can make, in public safety, you can make emergency repairs. As is stated previously, you are unable to permit these repairs because a private building in an open over navigable river is in violation of public safety doctrine, even though it doesn't exist. So they went back and forth. But he knew the building was in, and then they were willing to build a flood wall, which wasn't legal. I got in the documents, but they did it for him to remove his other two buildings out of the floodplain. So it's amazing, But the bottom line with this is he called a meeting with all the property owners, had them come in, and I was skeptical because I knew the guy and I didn't think much of him. But I did go to a few meetings and I realized what was going on, and I got the hell out of there. And I started putting money into my building because it's sad. And it's just like it's like a circus act, And I wish the best for everybody in town. But you can see what happened here. So he got the property owners with that addendum to sign to sell their building. for their assessed value. His building was ready to collapse in the river. Told you about how they have to get appraisals and stuff. What's the value of a building that's ready to collapse in the river? It's been condemned by the city, basically. It's worth nothing. It's you buy it as a loss because there's not much real estate there and you can't develop it, so it's basically worth nothing. See, he didn't want an appraisal for his building, but I believe that he knew the law and he misled these people, and it's a tragedy, folks. This whole thing. All right, thank you.